Hi, I'm Barry Sahajian. Welcome to my Essential Bass Theory course, the first episode. So I must give you a brief history of this and about learning theory and how valuable it really is. And I'd like to point out first, I've seen a lot of great tutorials on music theory. But my problem with these tutorials are it's done in 1 hour. And I have to tell you, very difficult to learn music theory and have it applicable to your music in an hour. You can pick out a few bits and pieces and help solve the puzzle if you don't know what's going on theory-wise. But if you really want to learn it, you've got to learn it a bit at a time. So that's how my approach to learning theory is going to be. And I must tell you, I played for almost 10 years without knowing anything, hardly, except for shapes of chords and root and fifth and basic, really basic stuff. And I worked a ton back in the 60s. I didn't really learn music theory until I went to Berkeley. But I didn't, it took a whole semester, a little bit at a time, to really absorb it. And that's the way Berkeley taught it. So that's the way I'm going to teach it. And I'm starting out from zero. The focus on this first episode is that it's going to be for a bass player that's just barely started or even a little further along, or maybe someone that wants to, brush up on the very basics and take it a little bit at a time. I plan on keeping this course going for some time because, theory goes on and on. So let's get started. The first steps to learning and understanding theory would be the terminology. We begin with a half step, also referred to sometimes as a semitone, a whole step, a perfect fourth, a perfect fifth, and intervals. These would be the fundamental elements of theory which you see over and over again during this learning process, as well as in your musical journey. A half step is the smallest interval used in the Western tonal music, also called a semitone. There are 12 semitones in our musical system. 12 notes in the music we play and hear. In my experience, the term half step is more commonly used than semitone, but I suppose it depends on the musicians you associate with. It is important to know that the half step and a semitone mean the same thing. A half step played on a guitar or bass would be one fret to the next. On piano, a white key to a black key, or from a white key to a white key where there is no black key in between. 2 half steps equal a whole step. The musical alphabet contains the letters A through G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In the key of C, which has no sharps or flats between the letters E and F and the letters B and C, there is only a half step. You can see this clearly on the piano. Notice there is no black key between B and C and E and F. Interval. An interval is the measurement of distance between two notes. Perfect fourth. A perfect fourth is the interval from the first to the last of 4 consecutive notes in a diatonic scale. A perfect fifth. A perfect fifth is the interval from the first to the last of 5 consecutive notes in a diatonic scale. Why are these intervals, the fourth and the fifth, called perfect? These intervals are called perfect because the ratios of their frequency are simply whole numbers and they are the most consonant. The other intervals in the major scale become increasingly less consonant or dissonant. Another characteristic of both fourths and fifths is that when you move from one fourth to the next consecutively 12 times, you will see all the 12 tones and land on the first note what you started on. This is called the circle of fourths and fifths. If you move to the right from the C around the circle, you will play in fourths all the 12 notes. If you move to the left of the C around the circle, you will play all the 12 notes moving in fifths. For those who are new at learning music theory, this can be quite intimidating, and I do understand that. However, this is what I was talking about at the beginning of this tutorial. You cannot learn this in an hour or even 2 hours. The way I teach it, one bit at a time. It is traditionally taught in academia. You move around in each direction, one note or one key at a time. Notice some of the notes are the same but bearing different names. For instance, C flat and B. They are called enharmonic notes. You will understand these more clearly as you progress a bit further in learning your music theory. The major scale is one of the first things a musician will learn. It is a diatonic scale. So what is diatonic? Diatonic means of the scale. For instance, one might say, the bridge of this song has a diatonic chord progression in the key of G. There is a diatonic line in measure 5 in the key of C. Last term in this tutorial is tetrachord. This is very important. It will define how and why keys have sharps and flats, basically. The definition is a scale of 4 notes, the interval between the first and fourth being a perfect fourth. The major scale is comprised of 2 tetrachords. Basically, the upper tetrachord is for sharps, and the lower tetrachord is about flat. Okay, what you're seeing here is the 2 tetrachords, but they're laid out on one string. This is a C scale, actually, because 2 tetrachords back to back is what a C scale is. It is what major scales are made of. So you can clearly see you got a whole step, half step, C to D, D to E, E to F, and then you have that sequence repeated again in the upper tetrachord, G to A to B, and B to C. What you see here is a C scale and an F scale. I have them laid out in the 2 tetrachords apiece, as previously discussed. And now is the time you're gonna realize that music theory is a series of revelations, and they happen over and over again, and it all ties together with an understanding that will help you in your music for as long as you play. So let's take some observations here. So you have these 2 rows, they're symmetrically vertical, and you have a C to an F vertically, that's a fourth. D to a G, that's a fourth. E to an A, that's a fourth. F to a B flat. Okay, the B flat is different from the C scale. That's one note with an accidental. And then G to C, A to D, B to E, and C to F have no accidentals. Okay, at this time I guess I'm going to have to add another musical term that is necessary. I just used accidental. An accidental is simply a sharp or a flat. You have a natural note or you have a sharp and a flat. When it's a sharp or a flat, it's called an accidental. Now we have the key of G. So this is a sharp key. So everything is working in fifths on the sharp keys. So you'd be going around to the left on the circle of fifths wheel, or circle of fourth and fifths, actually. So you have C to G, that's root in a fifth, D to A, E to B, it's all root in fifth, and it's the next string up, one whole step away. If I'm sure that most bass players at this point have played a root in fifth line, so you see I'm just trying to relate it as many ways as I can so you can understand it. Now you see we have an accidental, new word I just taught you, if you didn't know it, and it's an F sharp. Now that would be the first sharp, and it would that's the key of G. Key of G has one sharp, F sharp. The sharp, you must notice, occurs on the 7th degree of the G scale. This concludes the first Essential Bass Theory lesson. I'll be posting a new one every Friday, so hit the bell, subscribe, and get notified of each new lesson, because I'm going to take you where you want to go. You will not regret learning music theory. It was one of the greatest parts of my music career, when I could understand things, use the number system, and create and play better immediately, especially if you already have some facility or chops. You won't believe it. So, hit the bell, subscribe, leave a comment too. Let me know what you're thinking. You have questions? I will address them. I'll get back to you on them.